For months, the quiet black girl endured his cruelty in silence. But when he crossed the line he never should have, her grandfather, the town's most feared and elusive crime boss, made him pay. Not with rage, not with noise, but according to the unbreakable laws of the underworld. At Franklin High School, located on the northern edge of Chicago, survival meant knowing your place. The school, perched on the border between affluent suburbs and struggling neighborhoods, was a microcosm of the city's sharp divides. For some, it was a gateway to Ivy League dreams. For others, a daily fight to hold on to dignity. Standing out for the wrong reasons was a one-way street to misery. Among the 1,800 students enrolled, Amara Bennett, a 13-year-old black girl, was the quietest of them all. Reserved, solitary, she walked the halls of Franklin like a shadow. She was polite but distant, never inviting conversation. In a place where power belonged to those who thrived on control and exploitation, Amara was an easy target, or at least she appeared to be. She had learned early that silence was her best defense. But unlike other kids who curled in on themselves when cornered, Amara exuded something else entirely, a kind of quiet patience that made people uneasy if they looked at her too long. She never ran. She never fought back, and that made her different. Logan Mercer, on the other hand, was used to running everything. He had never heard the word no. His father, Senator Jonathan Mercer, had built his political career on the pillars of family values, law, and order. But behind closed doors, Logan had been taught a different set of values, ones where power meant control and control meant dominance. At Franklin, Logan was untouchable. If he wanted a kid gone, they were gone. If a teacher dared to challenge him, his father made a phone call, and that teacher either fell in line or transferred out of state. He had never faced consequences, not once in his life. When Logan first noticed Amara, it wasn't just because she was quiet. It was because she was black. Franklin was 90% white. No one said out loud, but kids like her weren't supposed to be there, at least not in Logan's mind. She was an intruder in his world, and that made her the perfect target. No friends, no allies, no backup. She was supposed to be easy, except she refused to play the part. The first time Logan saw her sitting alone at lunch, she was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Her posture was relaxed, not slouched. Her head was lowered but not bowed. It irritated him. That wasn't the look of a victim. It was the look of someone who existed beyond the rules of Franklin, outside of his control. That quiet confidence made his stomach twist. He decided to fix it. At first, the bullying was subtle. A shoulder check in the hallway that sent her books sprawling. A kick to the back of her chair during class. As she walked past his table, he'd mutter, just loud enough for her to hear, "Bet your mom's on food stamps." His friends would laugh. Their lives were so far removed from hers that they found his cruelty entertaining. But Amara never reacted. She didn't cry. She didn't retaliate. She simply looked at him, her dark brown eyes steady and unwavering. That stare made Logan uneasy. It wasn't fear. It wasn't defiance. It was something else. Something that made him feel exposed. He escalated. One Friday afternoon, in front of the entire cafeteria, Logan made his move. Amara was sitting in her usual corner, quietly eating her sandwich. Logan swaggered over, ripped the lunch bag from her table, and held it up. "Let me guess," he sneered, shaking the bag. "Government cheese?" Laughter erupted. Some students turned away, uncomfortable, but no one stopped him. No one ever did. Amara didn't move. Logan pulled the sandwich out and held it up for the crowd. "This all you got? Damn. Guess your dad's too busy to pack you a real meal." Still, she did nothing. Just watched him with that same unreadable expression. It enraged him. With a flourish, he dropped the sandwich onto the floor. A gasp swept through the cafeteria. Some kids chuckled. Others simply watched, waiting. Amara didn't flinch. Logan ground his shoe into the sandwich, twisting his foot like he was snuffing out a cigarette. "Oops," he said, smirking. "Better pick that up, Bennett. Ain't no food banks in here." But Amara didn't pick it up. She stood, calmly lifted her backpack on her shoulder and walked out. Logan expected her to run. or cry, or rage. She did none of that. She simply left. And that was the moment things began to change. That night, 3 miles from Franklin High, in a stately home surrounded by iron gates and trimmed hedges, Amara quietly placed her phone on her grandfather's desk. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Malcolm Bennett, a man who had ruled Chicago's criminal underworld for nearly 4 decades, picked up the phone. He studied the image on the screen, a photo of Amara, her face twisted into a grotesque caricature, captioned, "Welcome to the zoo." Malcolm's grip on the phone tightened. At 70 years old, he had lived through more wars than most men twice his age. He had built his empire on patience and precision, never anger. Anger led to mistakes. He didn't get angry. He got even. Finally, Malcolm placed the phone down, took a slow sip of his whiskey, and exhaled. "Ooh." Amara met his gaze. Logan Mercer. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. He'd heard the name. Senator Mercer's boy. He smiled. Not a kind smile. It was the sort of smile that made grown men shift in their seats. Logan Mercer had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Malcolm Bennett's name was never printed in newspapers. His fingerprints were absent from police files. But in Chicago, everyone understood who really ran the streets. While men like Senator Mercer chased votes and cameras, Malcolm moved in silence. He controlled the businesses, the unions, the favors that made the city breathe. He was the rules. And someone had just touched his granddaughter. That night, Malcolm made 3 phone calls. Short, quiet conversations that ended with understanding. By morning, Franklin High would no longer belong to Logan Mercer. At 11:42 p.m., Senator Jonathan Mercer's private landline rang. It was an unlisted number. He answered anyway. "You need to talk to your son." That was all the voice said. No threats, no demands, just a simple, chilling statement. And then the line went dead. Jonathan Mercer had stood on Senate floors, debated with presidents, and won. But that night, as he stared at the silent receiver, something cold gnawed at his certainty. He was no longer in control. By the time Logan woke up, everything had changed. The humiliating photo he'd circulated about Amara was gone. Erased. Every copy, every screenshot, every whisper had vanished. His accounts, social media, email, even his backup profiles, were suspended or locked out. Worse, the students who had laughed with him the day before now avoided his gaze. Even his best friend, Cameron, kept his head down. "What's going on?" Logan demanded. Cameron's voice was low. "Nervous. People are saying she's not just some girl, man." Logan scoffed, but the pit in his stomach deepened. During lunch, Logan tried to act normal, striding into the cafeteria like nothing had changed. But no one looked at him. No one laughed at his jokes. Even Jessica, who had giggled when he smashed Amara's sandwich, wouldn't meet his eyes. Then his phone rang. His father had never called during school. "Listen to me carefully," Senator Mercer said. "You're going to keep your head down. You'll go straight home after school. You will not speak to that girl again." Logan blinked. "Dad, do you understand?" "Yeah, I got it." The line went dead. And for the first time, Logan realized his father was afraid. After school, Logan found his usual driver gone. In his place, a sleek black Cadillac waited. 2 men in suits stood beside it. The back door opened. "Get in." Logan hesitated, but only for a moment. Inside, the air smelled of leather and cigar smoke. Across from him sat Malcolm Bennett. The old man studied him silently for a long time before speaking. "You've been a very stupid boy." Logan's throat went dry. He tried to speak. Malcolm raised a hand. "You think power comes from money? From your father's title?" He shook his head. "You made 2 mistakes." Malcolm took a sip of whiskey. "Your second mistake was thinking my granddaughter was alone." He set the glass down with deliberate care. "Your first mistake," he said quietly, "was making me notice you." As the car moved through unfamiliar streets, Logan sat frozen. He had lived his whole life thinking he was the predator. Now he knew better. Malcolm explained the rules. Not laws, rules. Laws can be changed, debated. Rules simply are. When the car finally stopped, Malcolm told him to get out. "Forget my granddaughter exists," he said. "If you don't, I won't bother with warnings next time. Logan nodded, pale, shaking. As he stepped out, Malcolm's voice followed him. And Logan, he froze. If you ever think about making this mistake again, I'll make sure you don't think at all. Back home, Senator Mercer was waiting. There were no lectures, just silence. Logan understood. The next day at Franklin High, everything had shifted. Logan was no longer feared. He was ignored. And Amara? She remained exactly the same. Calm, untouched, unbothered. Logan never spoke to her again. He never dared. And Malcolm Bennett never had to make another call. Because in the world Malcolm built, power didn't need to shout. It simply existed. And that was enough. The end.